So this project starts where most all of my favorite projects start, with a hunk of white oak. And this particular piece of white oak is fairly crunky with a lot of knots and a lot of great character to it. Made it a bit difficult to plane down, but with a bit of work I was able to smooth out both sides. Ended up being about 7/8 thick. I was able to use a marking gauge to then mark out my next cut at about 3.5 inches wide. Then with a ripping saw, I just took it over to the bench and ripped it down to the correct thickness, or excuse me, the correct width. So it ends up being about 7/8 by 3.5 inches by 1 foot 7 inches long. I needed to resaw this into 2 pieces, so I grabbed my kerfing plane and made a kerf, and then one of my all-time favorite tools, grabbed the Rebo frame saw and basically just cut it down to the size I needed as fast as possible. Love that thing. It's just so much fun to play with. A little bit of oil on the smoothing plane and I could go to town taking out all of the marks from the frame saw and the resawing work. This actually goes pretty quickly and is a bit of fun. Now I need a place to put all the chisels, so I start by laying out where all of the stop dados are going to be. And each of these are set to the width of a chisel so that the handles of the chisel are exactly 1.5 inches from center to center. And then to actually cut them out is fairly straightforward. I take one of my larger chisels and just make a stop cut on either side of the groove, right into the marking gauge line, and that way I can make it a slightly bit wider than the chisel. And then the chisel for that groove I actually use to remove the waste. And this is a lot of fun. This is actually where there's a serious amount of enjoyment in this project. And I just keep going to town. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes per groove, and stop cuts and remove the waste with the particular chisel for that groove. Just really enjoyable. Once all of the stop dados are cut, I can put the piece I resawed on it back together, and you can kind of see how it will come together, and each of those chisels will fit into it. The glue up is, well, just like most all glue ups, you put a heaping load of clamps on it, let it sit for a while, and then you come back and take the heaping load of clamps off of it, and you see what kind of mess you're left with. And most of the time it's pretty good, but most of the time it needs a little bit of cleaning up. So I had to take that over to the bench, and a few quick passes with the plane would bring it smooth and bring those joints up to what I'm really looking for in them. Ended up with a really nice surface. But the ends of it I can take over to the shooting board and just clean those up, make sure that they're nice and true, and get a really nice smooth surface on the ends of those. Now, no project is finished now without carving, and I really want to do something more medieval looking. And so I used the compasses to lay out 7 circles, and each of the circles touch each other so that they are even all the way across it. And once I laid out all my marks, I can start stropping. Now, I don't do much sharpening per se, but I do a lot of stropping, and I will do a very heavy work of strop running before, and then during the process itself, every 5 or 6 minutes, I'll just do 10 to 15 passes on the strop and sharpen it up nicely. Now with all those circles that I drew earlier, we can come back in and put some lines on it. And I basically just put 2 parallel lines on either side of the circle line that I drew. And then in each of these circles I filled a different pattern. And this was a lot of just playing around and trying different things and seeing what I like and learning new techniques and how the thing feels. And just kind of playing around, and did a few interesting designs. Some things I've done before, some I haven't. And then, of course, none of this would be right unless I put my logo in one of them. So I put the W's in the center one on it, and I kind of like how that came out. It's an interesting look. You can kind of see the medieval feeling to it. All of the corners I chamfered down with a fairly heavy chamfer with the block plane, gave it a nice finish on it. And boiled linseed oil and paste wax. It's a very simple finish and easy to do, and it's what I really enjoy. Most all of my shop tools and projects are finished with a boiled linseed oil. Now I have this block that all of my chisels fit in, but I have no place to put it. So I need to make some brackets to hold either end and then a couple brackets to hold the bottom so it doesn't fall off. So to hold either end, I ripped down a few pieces of sapele so that I have two pieces that are the same thickness as the block for the chisels, and two pieces that are 1/4 inch wide. I just taped this piece to the bench, and that allowed me to trim it down to 1/4 inch. And then I can glue them together, and you can kind of see now how it is going to make an L to hold the end of the end of the bracket. And after clamping, you can pull them out and basically see the shape I'm looking for. I need to drill some holes then to attach it to the bench. These ended up being a couple scrap pieces of red oak that will hold the bottom of the chisel rack. And then these are the brackets that I just finished making that will hold either end of the chisel rack. So I start with a bit that is the same diameter as the screw I'll be putting in, and then an 1/8 inch drill for the screw shank itself, so that they are recessed in little ways. The two pieces of red oak that I have are actually attached to the underside of the bench with a couple brass screws. Had those left over from another project. And 2 screws in each of those brackets allow the rack to stop from falling to the ground. And then 2 screws in each of the end brackets to keep it in place against the bench. And that's about it. It's a fairly straightforward project and a great way to hold all of my chisels. Now, one of the reasons why I went with this particular mounting design is so that I can actually remove this whole item and use that side of the bench if I need to. Because often there are things that I want that are hanging over the bench, and I just find it easier to be able to remove that quickly and be able to use that space, and then it goes back in fairly nicely. All in all, I am really pleased with this project. Yeah. I have been wanting a chisel rack for a while, and this is something I was kind of on the fence back and forth with. Number one, I have my kids in the shop a lot, and these are probably the most dangerous thing that they can touch. And I didn't want to have a rack where the tips were hanging out and they could walk by and rub off on them. I did want it on my bench so they're easier to use. But the moment I put something on my bench, I'm going to want to swing something off the side, or I need that edge. There's a reason I don't have my bench up against a wall, because I often go across the bench and stick out the other side. And so I wanted to be able to remove it. And so this is my first attempt at it, and I am absolutely, it is better than I was expecting, and I have been using it quite a bit. I'm also thinking about making one for my saws and possibly my files. Those would be slightly different, but along the same idea of mounting off the edge of a bench. This is actually a collaboration video with David Foss from David's Woodworking. He is doing a very, very similar chisel rack. We kind of use the same design, but he's doing his completely with power tools, so you can see how that would be done with power tools as opposed to hand tools. And his is actually mounted differently, as he doesn't use a traditional rouleau like I do. And so that's a little bit more for the average power tool user, and how would you mount your chisels so that they're still usable but protected. So go check out his channel and see what he has going on. He did an absolute gorgeous job on it, and I think you'll like his video too. So that's about it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that. This was a really fun project to do. I want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are phenomenal and a huge encouragement to me. Every day when I get comments from you, I just love hearing that, and it's the highlight of my day. So thank you for that. If you did like the video, please hit like and think about subscribing. Also, go check out David's channel over here. I think you will really enjoy that. And until next time, have a wonderful day.